Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh. I want to start the show by showing you a map. This is the South American continent. And what you're looking at are the ground space stations that China has either built for itself or has jointly constructed or has taken on lease for its space programs. Ground space stations keep track of satellites and other objects in the Earth's orbit. This is a capability that is known as space situational awareness that in the present military context allows modern armies to keep track of their enemy positions for fighting and winning wars in the 21st century. But what has spooked the United States of America is the proximity of the Chinese space ground stations to the North American continent, which has heightened the fear that China can now spy on US military assets and can also easily intercept sensitive information. To be clear, every nation in the world with space capabilities has got such ground stations that are needed for constant contact with satellites. Now, this map shows you the ground space station network of the United States. The United States claims that NASA's relationship with the US Army is close, but the overlap is clearly defined and transparent. But in the case of China, the PLA Strategic Support Force, which is responsible for space, cyber and electronic warfare, has a hand in virtually all of China's space activities. Now, the Espacio Liano ground station in Argentina that's been constructed since 2012 on 500 acres of land has caused considerable concern in the military circles within the United States. What is also interesting is that Argentina has got almost no say over the activities, either civil or military, for which China will use the space ground station. Now, space ground stations are also called the eyes on the sky. The job which these stations perform can also be done by certain high-tech surveillance ships with the added benefit of mobility. China has a total of 7 Yuan Wong class ships that it uses for space and satellite tracking. Interestingly, the United States presently has just 2 active instrumentation ships in its inventory, the USNS Invincible and the USNS Howard O. Lawrenson. In the month of August, the Yuan Wong 5 caused a huge controversy when Beijing compelled Colombo to allow its top-notch surveillance ship to dock at Hambantota in the teeth of protests by India. Beijing insisted that the trip by Yuan Wong 5 was just a routine one. But a surveillance ship like Yuan Wong 5 does not begin moving unless there is a missile test or a satellite launch. And China chose not to disclose to the world why it resorted to the maneuvers that it did with the Yuan Wong 5. The militarization of space infrastructure is not new, even if countries do not formally acknowledge the fact that satellites are put to dual-purpose use is well established. Leading the pack of the highest number of military satellites in the world is the United States. There is no official count on the number of military satellites that the United States has deployed, but estimates peg the number to be 123. Russia is a distant second with 73 military satellites. But most of Russia's military satellites are believed to be old with very few high-quality capabilities. According to experts, Russia is estimated to have just 2 optical reconnaissance satellites in orbit and just 1 confirmed radar satellite called Condor that is presently in operation. And just days before Russia invaded into Ukraine this year, Moscow had also launched another satellite called the Cosmos 2553 or the Neutron. Now, very little is known about the capabilities of this satellite, but it is widely believed to have radar sensing capabilities. But Russia's space program has been bogged down by budgetary constraints. Now, China has 68 military satellites orbiting the Earth. It is still far behind the United States in terms of its space capabilities, but it is beginning to close the gap on the strength of its technological advancements, its geostrategic investments, and also its now infamous checkbook. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967 specifically bars the appropriation or claims of sovereignty in deep space. It also bars states from placing nuclear weapons or other weapons of mass destruction in orbit or on celestial bodies, or stationing them in outer space in any manner. But there is a glaring loophole in this treaty. It only bans nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction. It does not ban weapons or other military infrastructure in general from being deployed in space. Now here's the thing. Nuclear deterrence depends on nations that rely on their missiles to deliver nuclear payloads. Now, jamming satellites and jamming signals can seriously alter the balance of nuclear deterrence. And China, by expanding its space footprint in the South American continent, is preparing itself for the next generation of warfare. Russia has no plans to destroy Ukraine. This is what the Russian President Vladimir Putin said at the end of the Astana summit in Kazakhstan, trying to climb down from the escalation ladder after having rained down the biggest missile and drone strikes on Ukraine since the beginning of this war. And what is more, Vladimir Putin even went on to state that Russia has no plans for further military mobilization in this conflict. After almost 8 long months of a grueling war that has claimed thousands of lives, this rare softer stance took everyone by surprise. You must hear it from the Russian president himself.
For now, there is no need for massive strikes. There are other goals to achieve for now. Out of, I think, 29 objectives, 7 have not been hit the way the Defense Ministry planned. They are dealing with them with these objectives. There is no need for massive strikes, at least for the moment, for now. As for the future, we'll see.
So is this a change of heart on the part of Vladimir Putin? Or is this a tactical climb down from the Russian president, whose soldiers are under the pump in eastern Ukraine? The momentum of the war has clearly shifted. Even Putin himself has been forced to admit of the 29 different objectives that he had, 7 of them have not gone the way that his defense ministry had expected. City after city in eastern Ukraine has been reduced to burnt-out shells in this abrasive conflict that has been fought by the Russians using their superior artillery guns. Moscow, through referendums that have been described as sham by the West, has annexed the 4 regions of Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia and Kherson. Ukraine has effectively been dismembered to ensure that Kiev stays out of the NATO military alliance. With this having been accomplished, Vladimir Putin, with a smile now, has said that Russia has no plans to destroy Ukraine. But the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is not buying this olive branch. Fully aware of the advantage that his soldiers now hold on the battlefield, with the help of the Western weapons, Zelensky now wants to fight till the Ukrainians are victorious.
This will be a victory of our heroes who are now in the Russian captivity, of those for whom it is the hardest. It is the hardest to remain Ukrainian and keep everything Ukrainian while being amongst killers. But we remember and do everything to bring back each and every one of our heroes. We won't leave anyone in captivity. The world sees that Ukrainians do not lose their humanity under any circumstances. The enemy can strike at our cities, but never at our dignity.
It is now only a matter of a few weeks before the snow begins to fall and general winter takes over the war zone. The battle lines are expected to freeze. But before that happens, over the course of the last couple of weeks, Ukraine, without taking direct responsibility, has managed to strike at the heart of Russia's prestige in the Crimean Peninsula. Initially, Moscow had blamed a truck bomb for the explosion on the Kerch Bridge. But now there are reports that are doing the rounds that it may have been an underwater unmanned drone supplied by the United States to the Ukrainian intelligence that may have been used for this attack. Vladimir Putin condemned the Kerch blast as an act of terrorism. 8 people have been detained in connection with this case. Russia had been chafing at the series of attacks that Ukraine has not directly claimed responsibility for, but have been described as acts of sabotage, largely by the Western media. Starting from the attack on the Russian Saki airbase in Crimea on the 7th of September, in which almost about a dozen top-notch Russian fighter jets were destroyed, to the leaks in the Nord Stream pipelines, which Ukraine has accused Russia of orchestrating to punish Europe, overlooking the simple fact that for Russia to stop gas to Europe, it could have just easily turned off the tap. Russia has struck back with a vengeance. For the first time since the beginning of the war, West Ukrainian cities such as Lviv, that had largely escaped the Russian onslaught, was subjected to Russian strikes. The Klishko Bridge in central Kiev was targeted in a bridge-for-a-bridge attack. Parts of Ukraine also experienced power outages, as Kiev claimed that Russia had struck its power grid and critical infrastructure. So for Kremlin to now change its tune and prod Ukraine towards talks can mean one of the two things. It wants to turn down the temperature in the battlefield at a time when the Russian forces are losing. It wants to consolidate the territories that it has annexed. And once General Winter has hammered the Western unity through a long and painful winter, Russia may want to resume its war again from an advantageous position. Or it could also just mean that the Russian offensive in Ukraine hasn't just been blunted, but has run out of steam. A driver was shot dead and an 11-year-old boy was critically injured in an attack on a school van in Pakistan. The religiously conservative Swat Valley, where the attack took place, is considered a bastion of the Pakistani Taliban. Now, ironically, it was exactly 10 years ago that 15-year-old Malala Yousafzai back then had been shot in the head while she was in a school bus by the Pakistani Taliban in the same city of Mingora. So why is the Swat Valley witnessing repeated terror attacks by the Pakistani Taliban? And what has the Pakistani government done to provide security for the people of the Swat Valley?
Thousands of students, accompanied by their teachers, walked out of classrooms and took to the streets in Pakistan's Swat Valley. They staged a protest against the surge and the terror attacks in the scenic Swat Valley.
We demand peace from the government. We want to study. We demand an end to terrorism and peace for our Swat.
On the 10th of October, unidentified armed men riding a motorcycle opened fire on a school van. 15 students were present inside the school van at the time of the attack. The driver of the van was killed and a young student had been grievously injured. The unidentified assailants fled from the scene and are yet to be apprehended. But this incident has sparked massive protests in the Swat Valley. Thousands of people poured onto the streets, chanting slogans and demanded that the government should clamp down on such terror attacks.
People who are involved in these attacks should be brought to justice. One kid is critically injured and fighting for his life, and the driver of the van is martyred. There is anger in public, and school children have come out to protest. All private schools of Swat will remain closed in protest.
No group has claimed responsibility for the gruesome attack. Residents of Mingora, the city where the attack took place, have squarely accused the Pakistani Taliban for the recent surge in violence in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The militant group shares the same ideology as the Afghan Taliban and has openly pledged allegiance to the Afghan Taliban, once the group had stormed to power in Kabul in 2021. The Swat Valley is notorious for being the stronghold of Pakistani Taliban from 2007. Exactly 10 years ago, the Pakistani Taliban had shot Malala Yousafzai in the side of her head, opposing her campaign for girls' education in the Swat Valley. Malala Yousafzai was just 15 years old at the time of the school bus attack in 2012. She was airlifted to Britain to receive treatment that saved her life. It is ironical that the latest attack on the school van in the Swat Valley took place just a day before Malala visited Pakistan. Despite the Pakistani government's best efforts to engage the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan in peace talks, the scenic Swat Valley is witnessing a recent surge in violence.
As many as 37 people, including 24 children, were stabbed and shot in a nursery in Thailand. The incident has been described as the biggest mass killing by an individual in Thailand's history. The horrific rampage lasted for well over 3 harrowing hours. And our next report gets you more details.
An unprecedented tragedy struck Thailand when a 34-year-old former police officer attacked a nursery and killed 37 people, including 24 young children, all in the age group of 2 to 5. The attack took place in the Naklang district of the northeastern province of Nong Bua Lamphu. A habitual drug user, the former police officer had appeared in a court earlier in the day on a drugs-related charge.
The shooter is Pania Khamram. Local police officers were informed about his involvement with drugs and arrested him in early 2022. The police found methamphetamine in his possession and also found that he is also a user. During the procession of his case, he was fired from the police force in June, and tomorrow would be his court trial day. We assume that his motive might be involved with him having to go to the court, and he might be having hallucinations from drug usage. These are the initial motives we have looked into.
Once seen as an honest, promising young man, the 34-year-old Pania Khamrab had transformed into an angry, introverted person caught in a downward spiral. In the rampage that lasted for over 3 hours in the very district where he was born, he ran over, stabbed and shot to death neighbors, including a childhood friend. Most of the children were sleeping when Pania stormed into the nursery. Armed with a shotgun, pistol and a machete, he stabbed most of the sleeping kids to death. Following the gory attack, he drove home, shooting indiscriminately on his way and attempting to run down people. Once home, he torched his white pickup truck and proceeded to kill his girlfriend and her son before killing himself. Even though mass shootings are rare in Thailand, there has been a recent spurt in such cases. In 2020, a disgruntled soldier of the Royal Thai Army, over a property deal gone sour, killed at least 29 people and wounded 57 after opening fire at 4 locations, including a busy shopping mall in northeast Thailand. That particular attack and other recent reports of gun violence renewed public debate over gun ownership rates in the country. According to estimates, Thailand had about 10 million privately owned firearms in 2016. 40% of these firearms were said to be illegal and unregistered. In Thailand, possession of an illegal firearm can land you in prison for up to 10 years and or a fine of up to 20,000 baht, that's $480. The firearm used in Thursday's attack had been obtained legally though. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime had issued a warning in June of extreme volumes of methamphetamine being produced, trafficked and used in Southeast Asia. Given this surge in supply, the wholesale and street prices in Thailand had nosedived to an all-time low in 2021. Thailand, along with Myanmar and Laos, forms part of Southeast Asia's Golden Triangle, which has long been a notorious hotspot for trafficking and drug production. Following the kingdom's worst mass killing, the Interior Ministry of Thailand has promised to toughen its gun possession and drug laws to prevent such incidents from happening again.
At the conclusion of this show, I want to leave you with this video that will make you sit up and think. The incident is from San Antonio in the United States. A 17-year-old unarmed young teenager was sitting in his car eating a burger. And unknown to him, this body cam footage that has since gone viral shows a police officer approaching his car. Was the 17-year-old teenager looking like he posed a threat to anyone? Well, the body cam footage does not indicate that to be so. The police officer opens the door of the car. It startles the young man. He tries to pull his car back and then, without any further provocation from the unarmed teenager, the police officer fires one bullet after another, even as the teenager screams, "Don't fire." This is a video that is very difficult to watch. The 17-year-old Eric Canto is now said to be in a critical condition, while the police officer, who had joined the police force just 7 months back, has been sacked. He was also later arrested and charged when he turned himself in, but has now been released after posting a bond of $100,000. Eric Cantu is presently said to be on life support and is said to be non-responsive. The San Antonio Police Department has said that this is a failure of just one individual, and it has got nothing to do with its policies or with the training that is given to young police officers. But instances of police excesses have come to the fore way too often for the US Police Department to dismiss this as a one-off case. Since 2015, there have been at least 135 instances where the police in the United States has used lethal force in situations where lethal force has been deemed unnecessary. The US police must introspect why are instances of police officers using lethal force, even when the victim is unarmed, keep surfacing again and again. Thanks for watching World at War, and if you want to reach out to me with any suggestions or comments or feedback, please feel free to tweet to me on the Twitter handle that you see on your screens. I'm your host Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.